My development. Instead of giving up, I'm happy. All I need to do is to take a break, rejuvenate, and let my mind recover. I hang out with my friends, play some table tennis with my brother at our office, listen to my favorite artists like Jay-Z, Bob Dylan, Kendrick Lamar, or Bon Iver. Watch movies, a lot of them. I just take some time to relax and let my brain get stronger while I'm not thinking or working on anything. And then I get back to where I left off. I use my energy to break through the wall, and it always works. Draw your thoughts. Before we invented language, we communicated in thought and images. But for many centuries, words have been our primary way to communicate. And that's why we also think in words. When I think, I talk to myself. And when I take notes, I also talk to myself. Create a chapter about drawing your thoughts, is what I wrote in my notebook when I came up with the idea for this chapter. I find that fascinating. One of the best-known thinkers of all time, Leonardo da Vinci, thought visually. How do I know this? I took a look at his notebooks, which you can easily find if you Google them. Here's an example. Now, we don't have to become this great at drawing, but I think we can still learn something. Drawing frees your mind from the constant verbalization. I started drawing the images from my blog posts over a year ago. My drawing skills haven't improved, but my articles have. And one of the reasons is that I take time to think about how I can visually share my idea. I want readers to immediately get what I'm trying to share in the article by looking at my drawings. That's why I think a lot about visualizing an idea. Sometimes I draw a graph, sometimes I emphasize a sentence or word, and I even make simple cartoons. After I make the drawing, I often edit my article to make my idea clear. And some articles even start with a drawing. This book also started with a drawing. It's the drawing I used in the From Chaos to Clarity chapter. Here it is again. I made that drawing without a purpose. I was just visualizing some of my ideas. One of my ideas is that it used to be chaos in my mind until I found a way to overcome it. As a result, I think clearly. That's the whole drawing. And now it's a book. Be yourself, not what you should be. Conquer yourself rather than the world. Rene Descartes. I'd like to ask you a few questions. What are you good at? What are you bad at? How do you learn new things? What are you passionate about? What do you dislike? In other words, who are you? What's your DNA? Sure, biologically, we're all more or less the same. We all have organs, bones, blood, nerves. We also all die. Why is self-knowledge important? I never had a clue. In all my years in school, no one ever talked about knowing yourself and why it matters. But it turns out that a lack of self-knowledge is the reason why I made the wrong decisions in my life. The jobs I had, the girls I dated, the things I chased, the decisions I made, the people I spent time with. It didn't match with my strengths, values, skills, and desires. My ex-girlfriend wanted to travel the world and live in different countries. I hate that idea. I want to stay close to my family and best friends. I don't feel like I'm missing out on something if I don't live in other countries. Having a home is what makes me happy. When you're in a relationship with someone who has different values, it's a zero-sum game. One person always loses something. We broke up. I've worked in boiler rooms, selling foolish products to people who didn't need them. Why did I have a job that made me feel bad about myself? I don't know. My best guess is that I wanted the money. I thought that's what you do, but I didn't know myself. Today, I know myself better than I did 10 years ago. And in 10 years from now, I'll know myself better than I do today. Knowing yourself is step one. Step two is acting on that knowledge. Sometimes opportunities come my way and I feel like saying yes too quickly. But I have to take a step back and ask myself, is this really me? Very often the answer is no. I've found that most things in life are not for me. Most jobs, opportunities, countries, people, parties, lifestyles, books, they're all not for me. It's about finding the things that are for me. Believe it or not, that's a very small list. Take time to reflect. We live busy lives, and sometimes there's no time for thinking. When thinking is not a priority, make it one. If you don't, you'll end up like me a few years ago. I didn't reflect on anything between 2012 and 2015. Result? All of a sudden, I felt overwhelmed and didn't know what to do with my life. I had a true internal crisis on my hands. Since I had no idea what to do, I started reading more books, and I noticed that many smart and happy people kept journals. They also reflected more on their life. More specifically, they reflected on the things they learned, mistakes they made, and the goals they achieved. When I started daily journaling, I began with writing my own autobiography. It's not meant for publication. It's meant for reflection and learning. If you don't know what to write about, write your life story. I'm sure you'll learn more about yourself with every paragraph you write. I journal and make sure to read my notes once a week. That's all I mean when I talk about reflecting. I do it for 3 reasons. 1. It helps me to uncover my mistakes so I can avoid them in the future. 2. It helps me to value my progress when I read my past achievements. 3. To get my thoughts in order so I can second-guess myself. That helps me to make better decisions. In short, I journal and reflect because it's useful. My money rules. One of my friends told me he hates his job. I asked him why he didn't take any action. "I need the money," he said. I automatically knew that he assumed that the only option for him is to quit. The reason is that we become too dependent on something when we give it too much importance. There's a simple solution to devalue the value of money. I live by these 5 rules. That's what I've done for the past 3 years. And I haven't had a single thought about money. Actually, that's not true. I still think about money. Everybody does. But as soon as I think I have enough money in my savings account, I stop thinking about money. No matter what happens, if you have enough money to survive for 6 months, you'll figure it out. There's only one condition: invest in your skills. It's naive to think we'll always be able to find a job or make money. It takes effort. But since when is that a surprise? I just make sure I invest my money instead of spending it. Investing money is not only about investing in the stock market or in real estate. I have no problem paying $3,000 for a new laptop because it's a tool I use to do my job, and that makes me money. Also, I'm never cheap when it comes to buying important things. I'd rather buy a good jacket that lasts years than buy a cheap one that I have to replace next year. Simply put, I don't buy things I don't need. I don't need a new iPhone every year. I also don't need $5,000 shoes. But that doesn't mean I own only one pair of shoes. I simply don't buy everything I like. Buying stuff in excess is not practical because I don't have enough space. Plus, I like to train myself to resist things to improve my self-discipline. Remember, money is a replaceable resource. When you're out of it, you can earn it back. You can't say the same for time. Don't spend too much time thinking about money. Don't try to think your way out of everything. This doesn't make sense at first sight, but when you think too hard, you often come up with bad ideas. That's because you can't actively think your way out of everything. We've all had good ideas while taking a shower. That's because we're not actively thinking. It's good to let your attention wander and stop thinking. This is also a part of controlling your mind. You have the ability to decide when you want to let go of your thoughts. Similar to relaxing your muscles when you lay on the couch after a tough day, you can let loose of your thoughts. You can do that in many different ways. Some like to take a yoga class. Others prefer to meditate every day. The medium doesn't matter. I've learned that there are many ways to relax. However, only one thing is critical. You don't need anything to relax but yourself. You don't need yoga, exercise, meditation, music, scents, or whatever it is you think you need. Let go of everything. You can escape your outside world and go inside your mind to find peace. If you can't do that right now, train yourself. Become aware of your thoughts, observe them, and let them go. That's the whole process. You can do that anytime, any place. You don't need a different scenery or class to do those things. Let go and relax, and do it as often as you think is necessary. You'll find that the moments you're not thinking are just as important as the times you are actively thinking. Be unconventional. I've grown to hate conventional thinking, not because I want to be different, but because conventional thinking gives you conventional results. I don't like that. And if you like conventional results, you wouldn't be reading this book. Let's examine decision-making for a second. The most conventional method for decision-making is to create a pros and cons list. Benjamin Franklin is the first who documented this method. He wrote about it to his friend, Joseph Priestley, in a letter to him in 1772. And today we create these lists all the time. What are the pros and cons of quitting my job, breaking up with my boyfriend, taking this job offer, buying a new car, starting a business? And then we take a sheet of paper, draw a line in the middle of it, and start listing the pros on the left and the cons on the right, or vice versa. Even though I like the simplicity of this method, I stopped using it after one of my friends recommended me to create one of these lists when my first relationship hit a rough patch. I actually made a pros and cons list for breaking up with my then girlfriend. When I think about it now, I'm ashamed, and it didn't even make any sense because there are always factors that, by themselves, outweigh all of the other factors. Nearly all pros and cons lists for relationships are the same. Pros of staying in a relationship. Having someone to share everything with, you can have sex, go on holidays, etc. Cons of staying in a relationship. Less free time for myself, getting in fights, going to in-laws, etc. It's always the same, and it's not useful. The same is true for quitting a job you hate. The pro is that you're free from a bad job. The con is that there's a lot of uncertainty. It's time to break free from this conventional thinking. Instead of binary thinking, start thinking more abundantly. It's not this or that in life. You can have this and that. I always thought I had to either quit my business or take a job. Also, many of my friends think you should quit your job to start a business. Whoever said these things? When my business wasn't growing a few years ago, I just took a job at a large IT research firm. I did both things. I ran my business in the evenings and weekends and sometimes during the day, and the rest of my time I did my work for the firm. Also, you can start a business while you still have a job. That's what I mean when I talk about thinking outside of the box. We always limit ourselves by narrow and conventional thinking. We always want to stay within a box. That's because we never take a step back to look at the larger picture. Take a look at the drawing below. If you're standing inside the maze, you'll probably start walking towards the middle, right? That's what you should do when you're in a maze. However, this maze is different. The prize is not in the middle, it's outside the maze. But you can only see the goal if you take a helicopter view. It's impossible to see the goal from within the maze. And yet, that's how most of us live. We do things conventionally because that's how it's done. When you stop doing things the way they're done, you'll start doing things how you get it done. Don't ask why I'm a fool with sending emails, especially when it comes to selecting the recipient. I always type the first letter of a name and hit enter. I trust the computer and never check whether the address I've selected is actually the person I want to mail. I'm lazy. Often, it doesn't matter, and I get funny responses back from people. But one time, this simple mistake cost me $150K in business. I was working with two companies on a multi-year consulting deal. Both of my contacts had the same name. Let's call them WIM. One WIM was an existing client. Let's call him WIM A. And the other was a prospect, WIM B. Both guys wanted the same type of consulting for their companies. But I gave WIM A a better rate because he was a loyal customer. However, instead of sending the contract to WIM A, I sent the contract to WIM B. This time, it wasn't an innocent mistake. WIM B previously had seen my proposal, which had a higher total price. But when he saw that WIM A got a lower rate, he was upset. Why does he get a lower rate? Is that how you do business? He decided not to do business with us. I learned 3 things. 1, always double check. 2, small things can become big things. 3, and don't play favors. There's no use in asking why I made a mistake or why I was always lazy with email. I just was, and I was wrong. There's no way to justify my mistake. Never brush important details off and say, it doesn't matter. Maybe it doesn't matter that you hit snooze every single day or that you ignore the details of your book, report, or movie. The point is that not striving for perfection becomes a habit. Don't worry about being a perfectionist. There's no such thing. More often than not, people are the opposite. Perfectionism is merely an excuse. In reality, we're scared of what people think of our work. Either way, there's no point in asking why when you deal with obstacles, challenges, or mistakes. Instead, think about what you can do to overcome or prevent the things that are holding you back. Think about the details even more. I overlooked a small detail, and it cost me a lot. But the lesson I learned was more valuable than the business I could gain. Details are probably the most important thing in business, work, sports, art, and life in general. The devil is in the detail. It's one of my favorite platitudes. But I never followed the advice in the past. The main reason was my impatience. I always tried to hurry everything, sending emails, making calls, writing reports, assignments, essays, you name it. I thought that it mattered that I got the work done. But I was wrong, because things often seem easy from the outside until you start doing them. This book took me 15 months to write. I spent countless hours researching the topic. I also spent hours on writing, editing, cutting, writing more, and editing it again. And then again. I also changed the title 3 times, and the subtitle even more than that. My first title was The Art of Practicality. I initially liked it a lot because it sounded familiar. But as I started writing a book about thinking, I also applied the methods to my own book. So I thought, what does the art of even mean? I didn't have a good answer. I took that as a sign that I needed to change the title. You know what's funny? My second title was The Power of Pragmatic Thinking. Like a genius, I came up with another generic title, which was even longer than the previous one. Do you know how many books start with The Power of? A quick book title search on Goodreads with The Power of gave me 83895 results. That's a lot of books with those words in the title or subtitle. One of the things I've learned about writing books is that you must stand out somehow. No one cares about a better book on thinking. Instead, it's likely that you picked up this book because you expected something different. But with the previous titles that I had drafted, I knew no one would think it'd be different. 2 weeks before I published Think Straight, I started promoting it on my site and social media. And quickly my readers became excited. Soon, emails like these came pouring in. Can't wait for the book. Well done. I am so excited to read your new book. What a determined person you are. I look forward to Think Straight. I love my readers. That's why I put in a lot of time to get the title right. At that time, no one had read the book, but based on the title, readers were already excited, and that was my goal. To everyone who emailed me before the launch, I hope I delivered. Thinking about details is nothing more than doing your job. If you're a writer, your job is to write the best book you possibly can. If you're a designer, your job is to create the best design you can. You're not here to write one book and call it quits, or to design one product and retire. If you want to grow financially, spiritually, mentally, you must revisit the details all the time. Never underestimate or overlook details if you want to do a job right. And if you don't, it's better not to do it at all. Take thinking out of the equation. I don't want to become someone who only thinks and never acts. In fact, the only reason I think is that I want to do more with my life. I like to get more out of it because it gives me satisfaction. That's why I don't like to think on an average day. Sounds paradoxical, right? You say you should think better, but now you're saying you're thinking less yourself. That's exactly what I'm saying. Improve the quality of your thoughts so you improve the quality of your actions. And always have an imbalance. Action, thinking. The best way to make sure you act more is to rely on habits. Take exercise. I've struggled with staying in shape for all my life, and I was overweight for years. I always played mind games with myself about exercise and diet. Should I go for a run or go to the gym? I'll have this bag of chips and hit the gym tomorrow. What days should I exercise? Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays? Or maybe Tuesdays and Thursdays? That's too much useless thinking. Instead, I've made a few basic rules. Exercise at least 30 minutes a day, every day. Don't burn yourself out. Don't go all out. Eat healthy. No junk food. Don't consume more calories than you burn. Keep track of what you eat and how much you exercise. When you combine a few rules, you have a system. And a system helps you to take the thinking part out of the equation. The only thinking you need to do is when your system doesn't give you the results you want. If my system would make me feel bad or gain weight, I would rethink it. And even if it works, a system is never perfect. That's why I regularly think about what I can change or how I can improve my systems. Don't live with regrets. Growing up, my grandmother was always around. She was a very kind person. Maybe too kind because she made many sacrifices in her life. For her parents, brothers and sisters, husband, and later on her children. That's also a part of life. You can't live together and build a strong family without giving. But the biggest sacrifice she made was to live in the Netherlands for the last part of her life instead of her home country of Iran. As long as I remember, she always talked about the past, always. And especially during the last few years of her life, she almost cried every day because of regret. Fortunately, my mother, father, brother, and I visited her often and cheered her up. But through the laughs, I could see the regret. It was always present. I've learned many lessons from my grandmother, mostly about kindness and the importance of having strong family values. But the most important lesson I've learned was that you don't regret what you did in life. You regret what you didn't do. And when my grandmother passed away in January 2015, I decided to live by that lesson no matter what. For example, I always thought I wanted to travel the world and live in different cities. I know it's not an original goal. I speak to a lot of people who love that idea of freedom and exploration. Why is that? I think a lot of it comes from pop culture. A lot of people idolize people like Jack Kerouac and Ernest Hemingway, who were famous for their travels. And young folks now are inspired by social media personalities who also travel the world and share it on their Instagram feed. The medium might have changed, but the desire to travel to others and share your experiences with others has not. However, that lifestyle is not for everyone. But I didn't know that before I actually started traveling. How could I? Some things in life you must experience to know what they're like in reality. No one can truly feel how it is to be an entrepreneur unless they start doing it. You can read all the business books you want and watch as many videos about entrepreneurship as you want, but they will not make you an entrepreneur. Ever. You will only end up living someone else's life. I'd rather eat rice and beans so I can do the things that I love instead of having a job that makes me miserable, but pays well. At the end of the day, this is your life, and the only way you can live with yourself is to follow your strongest desires. Just make sure you think straight so you eventually act on those thoughts. Never look back. I hardly look back on life. I never daydream of the past. I don't look at old photos all day long. I don't even think about taking pictures because I'm too involved in the present. Sometimes I feel like most people are stuck in the past. They live their life in the past tense. Instead of enjoying a moment, they grab their phone and take a picture of it. Instead of living life through a lens, I prefer to be present at all times. Now, I must be honest that I fail to be 100% present. However, I intend to live now, and I know I'm successful because I never have the urge to relive the past. I'm too busy enjoying now. That doesn't mean I never stop to take a family picture. I just don't go around snapping millions of pictures that I will never look at again. Think about it. When do you have the time to take a look at all your memories? How many pictures and videos do you have? How many old documents, old diplomas, memorabilia, and other physical things do you have stored that remind you of the past? If you're having a hard time letting go of the past, let me make it easier for you. You're never going to use your first iPhone that you've kept in your desk drawer for years. Edit that video from the weekend trip you took with friends. Look at your old school papers, essays, and grades. Wear those old clothes you have in storage. Do anything with the object that reminds you of your first date. When we hold on to a lot of things in the past, they form an obstacle to living in the present. The only useful purpose I can think of for looking back is to learn. You can draw many lessons from looking at your past. That's why I like to journal. I regularly go back to my journal entries to understand my thought process at the time, especially when something doesn't work out the way I want. I go back and try to understand why. For example, in 2017, after 2 years of regular blogging, and building up a newsletter with more than 22,000 members, I decided to start a paid membership site. Before I started the membership site, I contemplated it excessively. If I get 1,000 readers to support me with $5 a month, I can make a living off writing, training, and helping others. The paid members will get exclusive content from me. That's a good value proposition. That was my thinking process. I came up with the number 1,000 because of Kevin Kelly's seminal article, 1,000 True Fans. I also studied how other bloggers started their membership sites. Everything looked good on paper, and I had sold hundreds of online courses before that, so I knew people valued my work. But things didn't turn out as I expected. After a month, 78 people signed up. After 6 weeks, I pulled the plug on the membership site. Many of my friends, colleagues, and even paid members told me I stopped too quickly. Maybe so. However, I'm not the type to quit when things are hard. I've thought about quitting education many times during my 5 years when I was getting 2 degrees. I also thought about quitting my family business many times because it's very hard to make a living. But that's never going to change. No, instead, I quit my membership site because I thought straight. At this rate, it takes me more than 12 months to get 1,000 paid members. Plus, within the first month, half a dozen people canceled. So if I take cancellations into account, it will take me even longer. Also, during the past 6 weeks, I've felt an obligation to provide exclusive content to my paid members. I want them to get something out of the membership. That pressure cost me a lot of time that I could spend on growing our family business or my coaching practice. All in all, a membership site is not the right strategy for me. Instead of making a simple calculation of 1,078, I thought further than that. How can you get people to stay? How much work does it take you? And what are alternative ways of achieving my goals? There are many other ways I can help others. There are also many other ways for me to make a living. That's why I decided to pull the plug on my membership site after only 6 weeks. If things don't work out, it's not the end of the world. Make a decision, stand by it, move on, and only look back to learn. When I look back on my experiment with starting a membership site, I could have easily prevented myself from wasting a lot of time. It took me about 3 months to create the membership area, create content, write copy, etc. Before I started, I knew that it would take time to run a membership site. Remember the chapter about details? If you want to do a job, do it right or not at all. In this case, I should have done nothing at all. Why? Because I spent too much time on running my family business, writing articles, books, creating courses, and consulting. From looking back, I've learned that I can only take on one big project per every aspect of my life. So yes, look back, but don't stare for too long. Life happens now. Spend your time well. Time is limited. Sooner or later, we all figure that out. And once we do, we start being more conscious of the way we spend our time. Thinking is a double-edged sword. It can help you, but it can also destroy you. The outcome depends on how you use your thoughts. Your mind is an instrument, nothing more, nothing less. In this book, I shared how I've learned to use my brain more effectively. Sometimes you have to think differently, and there are times you must stop thinking altogether. It's up to you to decide when you should deploy which method. But no matter what you do, don't spend too much time in thought because that's a waste of life. At the end of the day, thinking by itself is useless without action. But like we talked about earlier, action follows thought. Effective thoughts, effective actions. To clarify what I mean, I've made a list of what I think are effective thoughts. Making your life better, growing your career and business, visualizing your future, thinking of new ideas, solving problems, coming up with fun things to do with your partner, family, or friends. It's really not that complicated. However, sticking with this way of thinking is very hard and takes work. Don't expect to become a practical thinker after reading this book only once. Like any skill, better thinking requires daily practice. I do that by looking at everything that happens in my life as an exercise for thinking better. Because if I don't, I start wasting my time on useless things like complaining, feeling sorry for myself, and not enjoying my life. We're collectively thinking so much we're missing out on life. And it has nothing to do with fancy things other people do. We all know that the beauty of life lies in the small things. Did you notice the sunshine this morning when you woke up? Or the raindrops? Did you notice the smell of your coffee? Did you feel the texture of your cereals? If your answer is no, you definitely need to get out of your head. Stop thinking and start feeling. Inner calm. There's only one end goal to all of this. Inner calm. No matter what you experience in life, and no matter what happens to you, your mind should stay calm under all circumstances. That's the ultimate prize in life. Mastery of the mind means that we control our mind. Remember, you can only achieve that through daily practice. Some people call it meditation, and others might call it mindfulness. No matter what you call finding inner calm, please don't overcomplicate it. You don't need a $10,000 course to learn how to find some peace inside your head. Just sit down, be one with your thoughts, observe them, and then ignore them. That's all there is to meditation. I meditate all the time. When I walk, exercise, write, wait, sit, lay, whatever. I can always find the time and energy to go within myself to find peace. I don't need anything to do it. That's important to realize. I've said it before. But it's so important that I'll say it again. You don't need a yoga mat, music, or teacher to help you control your thoughts. You can go within yourself to find calm anytime you want. You also don't need a holiday, new shoes, or a drink. How do I know this? I control my mind. I decide what it does. So can you. Think beyond yourself. Many of the ideas I shared in this book come from the philosophy of pragmatism. If you Google pragmatism, you'll probably read that the philosophical movement was founded by Charles Sanders Peirce, a former professor at Johns Hopkins University. But if you look closer into the story behind the philosophy, you'll find that it was William James who actually credited Peirce as the founder in 1898. Even though Charles Sanders Peirce was a well-respected academic during the 1880s, he had fallen from grace by the end of the 19th century. James and Peirce got to know each other during the 1860s when they were both students at the Lawrence Scientific School at Harvard. Peirce, once considered as a prodigy of mathematics and logic, went on to become a professor at Johns Hopkins University. But he lost his position in 1884 due to a scandal involving his remarriage. It's truly a sad story. Peirce's first wife left him in 1875, and shortly after that, he became involved with another woman while still being legally married. However, his divorce became final 8 years later. During those 8 years, he lived with a woman he was not married to. Apparently, Simon Newcomb, who was Peirce's colleague, told on him. Consequently, he was let go in what became a public scandal. Sadly, Peirce never found academic employment again and lived in poverty for years after he was fired. Peirce even lived and slept on the streets of New York City for years. No one helped him, except for his old friend William James. After James overcame his depression in 1870, he started building a body of work that, more than a century later, remains relevant. James became a Harvard professor and an academic celebrity due to the publication of his book, Principles of Psychology, a book that took him 12 years to write and was published in 1890. In contrast to his friend, James's career was on the rise for years, and out of nowhere, in 1898, William James credited the principle of pragmatism to the forgotten Charles Sanders Peirce in a lecture called Philosophical Conceptions and Practical Results. Pragmatism means that one must look at the practical value of ideas. James believed scientists wasted their time on abstract ideas and theories that had no impact on people's lives. Would you change the way you lived if a scientist proved how the Earth was created? Louis Menand, author of Pragmatism, a reader, says of the principle of pragmatism that we can never hope for absolute proof of anything. All our decisions are bets on what the universe is today and what it will do tomorrow. Regardless of what people think of pragmatism, one thing is sure. William James did a favor to Peirce by crediting the philosophy to him. And that is exactly what makes James great. He didn't strive to take credit for something that he created. Because without James's actions and promotion of pragmatism, the philosophy wouldn't exist and Peirce would be forgotten. By that act, James did something meaningful. He helped a friend. Peirce gained some respect and even wrote several papers in his last years. And from all the wisdom of James, that's the most important thing I've learned. William James himself once said, "The greatest use of a life is to spend it on something that will outlast it." Practically speaking, there's no purpose to doing something that outlasts you. You won't be there to see it anyway. But that's not the point. If we live our lives every day with that idea in mind, that we should strive for creating useful things that matter to others, we end up spending our time on things that actually make a difference. When you do that, life automatically has meaning to everyone. Thank you, a gift. Thank you for going on this journey with me. My goal was to take you inside my thinking process. I hope that this book serves as an anchor to you and that you read it more than once, especially during trying times. I appreciate that you took the time to finish Think Straight. Deciding to read one book over the other might seem small to a reader who has millions of options. But to me, the author, it means everything. So, thank you. To show you my gratitude, I want to offer you something in return. A bonus ebook with a behind-the-scenes look at my personal journal entries. In the bonus ebook for Think Straight, I take you one step deeper into the creative journey. If you enjoyed this book and want to know how it was made, go to dariusforo.com, Think Straight Bonus, to subscribe to my newsletter and download the bonus for free. I hope we can continue this conversation about how to think better. Therefore, I invite you to share your story with me, personally or on my site's community page, where other readers share theirs. I like to build real relationships with my readers. That's why I always ask people to stay in touch. My desire is to see other people do well in life. So, please go out there and make good shit happen. And then, let me know about it. Take care, Darius. Thank you for listening. If got some from this video, then like this video and share with friends. If you want more video like this, subscribe this channel and hit the bell icon. And forget this book link in the description. Thanks for watching.